All right, welcome back, everybody. We're here with Sydney. We're going to go ahead and jump right into our conversation. So, Sydney, I want you to just go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone that's listening. Just let them know a little bit about who you are, your history, how you got into CrossFit, all that kind of stuff, whatever you want to share with everyone.
Great, thank you. So as Caden said, my name is Sydney, and I grew up, was born and raised here in Indianapolis. Lived here my whole life. Went to college up at Anderson University. That's where I met my lovely wife, Jenna. We met about our sophomore, junior year. Started dating around that time. Graduated. Did the whole Christian college track of getting married that next year. And throughout that time, after our marriage, that's when I kind of started to explore my own gender identity. It's when I went from identifying as a female to identifying as a transgender male. And just kind of took that journey. I have now started the medical process. I'm about a year into that. And that's where we are today. I started CrossFit in December. I did the on-ramp classes. And I think the just diversity that I bring to the gym is that I have now experienced life identifying as a female and also identifying as a male. So I bring a little bit of perspective, not only in social interactions and out in public, but also having to do with the gym. And really the differences that I have felt going into a gym identifying as a female and also going in identifying as a male, and just the different complexities that come with both of those things.
Yeah. Sydney and I both went to the same college, for those of you who are watching or listening. So that whole ring by spring culture is totally a real thing. I fell into that too. So I'm going to make fun of myself a little bit on that. But so we've had to talk about all of this stuff before. And I think something that's really interesting about you is how you found CrossFit and what that experience was like for you in those weeks and months leading up to deciding to try CrossFit, as opposed to some of the other fitness facilities that you had tried, and kind of fill people in on what that was like for you, and then how, when you got to M4G, that was drastically different.
Great. Yeah. So I grew up playing sports. I've always been an athletic person. I've done my on and offs going to the gym. I typically just signed up at, a big brand name gym and would keep my membership for my contract time and get out of it because I was bored with it. Just on and off working out. So I during my transition, when I started the medical process, I did have top surgery, which, for the general public, that's basically a double mastectomy. But the way that they do it is they sew the muscles so that it creates more of a masculine chest, which is different than just a regular double mastectomy for, say, someone who maybe had breast cancer. So the procedure's done differently. So I found CrossFit and M4G after that surgery. I was looking to just kind of start fresh, 100%. I had some really terrible experiences at big brand gyms and local places where I had signed up for a personal trainer even. I had identified myself as male. I had written on, the health section that this was a procedure I was going to be having and this is how I identify, and still felt very discriminated against. One of the gyms had a women's only area, and the trainer had asked me to go into that area and work out with him and do our trainings there in the women's only, even though I clearly identified as male. So that was super uncomfortable. And not only for me, but I felt like the women around me also felt uncomfortable and wasn't quite sure why I was in there. And so that was a huge barrier for me. And I ended that way before my contract time and paid to get out of it just to be done with it and not kind of have to look back. I had several experiences like that and just feeling really uncomfortable again with a bigger public place that had, locker rooms, and, I wasn't sure where to go and was kicked out of both women's and men's locker rooms, which really puts you in a tough place that I can't go to the bathroom at the gym. I can't change my clothes at the gym. So I have to come very prepared and have a very limited time that I'm even able to be there so that I can have enough time to leave and go find somewhere else or get home in time to use the restroom. So walking into those places, I was automatically just very stressed out, which is not a great mindset to be in when you're getting ready to push yourself physically and you're already mentally pushing yourself and exhausted mentally. So I was just looking for a complete 100% restart. I had seen CrossFit friends doing it, advertisements for it. I never thought I would end up there, just because it seemed like a bunch of superhumans. And that just seemed way out of my league. I had never done anything like it before and very unknown. And I just did a Google search, and M4G is actually like 4 minutes from my house. So I said, you can make 4 minutes work. No excuses. Go try something new. You're redoing your whole life anyway. Now's the time to really rebrand yourself and associate yourself with a new community of people.
So, Sydney, let's try to help people understand just a little bit. So we're going to rewind back to the women's only section, and how that made you feel. So for us, we've had good conversations. I know that using correct pronouns is a really big part of being transgender. And that's actually a big step in the right direction for someone who's not transgender to really prove to you that they see you for who you want to be and who you are now.
Correct.
So when I hear you say I was uncomfortable, if we can put aside specifically males out there listening to this, I don't really care what they agree with you or believe in. The point is that all men out there, if you were told to go work out in a women's only section, let's just pause for 1 second. How would that make you feel? And that's how you felt. It doesn't matter that they think Sydney was at one time a female, and that's how I choose to view. They are the problem, right?
Correct.
Now, we had a conversation with Abel and Bran, and Abel brought to light that, power comes from how you see yourself and how you carry yourself. Unfortunately, we don't have control over how other people view us or how other people, what they say about us or anything like that. So the point is that that's how you identify. And for Kane and I, we have this conversation. If someone wants to be called Dr. something or Mr. or Miss or Mrs., all the way to some ridiculous thing like Chad Ocho Cinco, Meta World Peace. Like, that's not their real names, but they went out, they paid the money, they got their names changed, and it's a respect thing. I respect you as a human being. If that's what you want to be called or referred to as, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And I think that that's where we start. Would you say that that's pretty fair, is like start by referring to me as I want to be referred to?
Yeah, 100%. And, something that is not really well spread throughout community right now is normalizing pronoun usage and asking someone, what's your pronouns? Really, as a society of where we're at today, we should be all introducing ourselves with our pronouns, even if it's very obvious that you are female or male, and even that doesn't apply. I could look very female and identify as a male, but not have the resources to transition. However, I still want to be referred to as he, him, his. And so I think that that's something that we as a society just aren't quite there yet, but we need help getting there. And every person that starts to normalize that process is going to help us get there.
So moving forward kind of with M4G, when you actually came into it, can you speak a little bit about kind of our first email, and let me paint the picture, and then I'll kind of let you fill everything in. So our first email back and forth was definitely that you had been to other gyms or other communities and just did not feel comfortable. And you did use that exact scenario with me. You also talked about the restrooms. And fortunately, I told you that we didn't have a male-female restroom. We had two, first come, first serve. We use proper etiquette in our restrooms, and that's just the way that it is. But can you talk about two things? First, let's throw us under the bus. I want you to talk about anything that you think we can do better, because I do know for a fact that you and Caden have had that conversation. So I want to hear that one first. And then two, I want you to really talk about when you really felt accepted. And if that was from second one, great. But talk about why you feel or continue to feel accepted at M4G.
Okay. Yeah. So to speak to the first point,
our conversation through the email.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I had emailed Tristan and just asked and said, I think I'm going to love this place, and I don't want my heart set on it, and then to find out that it's not going to be a safe place for me to be. And immediately, Tristan, you emailed back and reminded me of all those things and kind of informed me of this is our culture and this is where we're at. And as far as M4G today, and my conversation with you, Caden, we talked about the different weightlifting bars and how we refer to them as the women's bars, the men's bar, and the training bar. And one of the conversations we had was just, why do we label them that way? And is it necessary? So the first point we talked about was, yes, it's necessary in the sense of competition. So there are differences. So if someone who identifies as male is competing, they're going to be using the 45-pound bar. But once that's established in on-ramp, per se, do we need to keep referring to it that way? Or can we say, for competition purposes, men use the 45-pound bar, women use the 35-pound bar, but from here on out, we're going to just refer to them as 35 and 45-pound bar. You use what bar you feel like you're supposed to use. And really, Caden and I kind of went further on that discussion and said, the men's bar is thicker, and I'm 5'2" and have hands like an 8-year-old. So my hands are not going to wrap around the men's bar.
John Gray also has 8-year-old hands.
And so for me, even just using proper technique, I have to use the women's bar because I can't grip the bar like I'm supposed to. And so that was kind of one of the changes we talked about was, yes, it needs to be established for people who maybe don't know that for competition purposes, there is a difference. But from there, we could just refer to it as 35 and 45-pound bars.
Yeah, I actually took that to heart when I've been doing the on-ramp, the most recent on-ramp recently. And the last two have had to be, because we only have 2 people right now. So the last 2 have had to be separate. And we're going to get both of them together for the next 2. But for the most recent one on Saturday, I was introducing her to the weightlifting, to the barbells. And like the first thing that came to my mind was our conversation. And so when I explained it, I was like, these are our 45-pound bars, these are our 35-pound bars, and these are our 15-pound training bars. Didn't mention anything else other than that. And I felt like it was a very clear communication. You can obviously see when you look at them, like the 45-pound one is thicker, the 35 is a little bit thinner, but I didn't even think to mention like, oh, this is the men's and this is the women's.
Right.
It just, it transitioned so easily for me. So I appreciate that aspect of our conversation because I'm the one, me and Tristan both are the ones introducing new people to the sport. So.
Right. And I also want to make it known that, yes, it's out of respect for that person and respecting how they identify, that you don't want to misgender them by making them feel pressured to use one bar or the other. However, it also has a lot to do with confidence. During on-ramp, when I first started, I had not worked out in forever. I had just had a drastic, surgery on my chest. So I was even limited really greatly to what I could even lift and do at that point. And I felt really pressured that, oh my gosh, I've got to get the 45-pound bar because here I am starting this new place and I'm supposed to be identifying as male and these people don't know me, so I've got to prove myself. And I picked up the 45-pound bar and I just think my eyes got super big, like there's no way I can do this. And I got really stressed out. And then, the rest of that workout and the workouts to come that I was still choosing to use that bar, I just mentally destroying myself the whole time, just telling myself, oh, you're not man enough. You don't, you're not proving yourself. This is why. This is just the world telling you that you're supposed to do this and use this lighter bar. And, I was never going to make physical gains if I was just completely destroying my mental health at the same time.
Yeah. What was that second part?
So second piece is when you first came to M4G, when did you really start to feel like, wow, I did make the right decision. This is why I love this community. This is why I want to stay. Basically, those kinds of things.
So really from our initial email, that opened up a safe place for me. I hadn't experienced it yet, physically being, in the gym and around you guys and getting to know you. However, just that initial email back saying, yes, this is a safe place. And I believe you even said in there, we want you here. And we want you to feel safe. And you really open the door for conversation without saying it outright. And so my first couple times at M4G, just getting to know people, I recognized that people were there to get to know me as a person. They didn't care necessarily how I identified. They cared about my career and my family and wanting to know my favorite foods and things like that. And so it really made me feel like I was joining a family.
Yeah, and you're part of the 5:30 a.m. crew.
I am.
Sometimes it's 6:30 a.m., right?
Yes,
But
correct.
for the most part, if you know what I'm talking about, 5:30 a.m. is their own little family. I mean, you're getting up butt crack of dawn anyway. But yeah, it's just their personalities in there. And what I've noticed, Sydney, when I coach twice a week, that class is, we do a question of the day. And sometimes the question was not meant to make anyone uncomfortable, but it goes to show that you feel comfortable in front of people. And I wish I could give an example, but there's been certain questions that you've actually answered talking about your transition or the switch and stuff like that. And I think that goes to show me like, wow, Sydney feels really good here. Yeah. Like he knows that he can say this and everyone's going to be okay with it or cool with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You remember that one question that we talked about,
I do.
Right?
I do remember the question.
Yeah.
The question was, what is something offensive that someone has said to you that they didn't intend to be offensive, I believe.
Or meant to be a compliment.
Or meant to be a compliment. That's what it was, yeah. And my response was, you were really hot when you were a girl. And I never know how to respond to that. Thank you, I guess. But what does that say about me now? I don't know.
Yeah, and I was the coach when I asked you that question. And I, again, like how Tristan explained it, like we never think of those types of things when sometimes for people it's like, you're really organized. And some people are like, thanks. But when you answered that, I was just like, wow, I didn't even think about like the depth of what that means to you. And I think that's initially what really sparked my interest in wanting to even just talk to you in general and just get to know you better as a person.
Yeah.
Plus the fact that we went to the same school, so we have a lot to connect on and what that culture is like. But yeah, I think so. What I like so much about you, and it's one of the things that we talked about a couple weeks ago, is your response to people who necessarily might not think or don't understand what they're saying or how they're saying it. And you show a lot of grace to people, and you get that at work. You get that anywhere you go. So talk to the listeners a little bit about what that looks like for you. Let's say, someone approaches you or says something that just they don't understand. How do you interact with them in that way?
Yeah. So first of all, I have to evaluate what is the risk factor in approaching them. Am I going to put myself in an unhealthy position when in the long term it may not really matter if I approach this person or not? If it's a stranger in the grocery store, I'm probably not going to say something. I'm just going to go about my day and be all right. However, if it was, I'll go ahead and explain one of our first interactions, Tristan and Kaden, that I had at on-ramp. Tristan had accidentally slipped up and referred to me as she, her pronouns. And to me, it was worth talking about. And they were actually both the ones that approached me after class first, before I even had a chance to email and just say, hey, I don't know if you recognize you slipped up, but I just wanted to make it known that in case you forgot or just didn't understand, this is what I meant by using he, him pronouns. And so you guys actually came to me first and just apologized. And that, again, solidified for me 100%. This is where I want to be, because you guys took the time to put yourselves out there and be vulnerable and say, I made a mistake, and allowed me that opportunity to share more of myself.
Yeah, I think it's great to hear that. I noticed in 0.5 seconds what I had said, and I knew that if I had corrected it, it might even make it worse. So it was funny because I already knew I was going to approach you. Caden came over once you started warming up and said, hey, did you realize? And I'm like, yes, I do realize. And yeah, I mean, I think what's important is, and we talked with this about brand to brand enable, is understanding that, we are all, if we're really a team, if we're really a family, if we're really a community, we're all trying to move forward with this. And some people, it's no different than fitness. When you come into CrossFit, could you imagine if I was like, hey, if you don't have a 3-minute Fran in a month, we're going to ask you to leave. If you don't get your first pull up in 3 months, it's not working out. So it's like, it is one of those things where just like people come into CrossFit and there's so much to learn, there's so much to educate, and then we're finally physically trying to get places. It's the same thing with things that, quite frankly, we're just not used to. So I think for us, it's just really important that it's amazing when you show us grace like that. And I don't know if you'd like to go into the next topic, talking about grace, but just our beliefs as people. he shows us grace, and by he, I do mean Jesus Christ, and we believe in that. And so I think for what's going on in the world, and it's been going on for a long time, but it's hitting its apex right now. And so I think for us, like, that's how I try to approach every day, is instead of getting overwhelmed or, like, this is just too much, I really do just try to take every situation one at a time and understand, like, wow, how many times have I messed up? And every single day he shows me grace. And I think as Christians, like, this is also a chance for us to also show people that we are not who they think we are. Some people have had really negative experiences. It's no different than your gym experience. If Sydney had continued to have bad gym experiences and had never given us a try, okay, now put in churches. If Sydney had had bad church experiences, or pastors, or people in his life that he trusted, and then all of a sudden they lost his trust, if you had given up on that, then you would have never found this place. I think that for a lot of people who have ever stepped in a church or ever had a religious figure, something bad may have happened, and that's just not everybody. And that's actually what we had a really good discussion with Abel and Bran, is that Abel, living with a white family for so long, he has seen nothing but good from white people specifically. And so he was struggling with specifically the Black Lives Matter and everything that's going on right now, because he doesn't see it that way. And for us, it was really important to talk about that and understand that for all the bad out there, if we could just stop for a second and actually realize that there is just as much good. We just maybe haven't found it yet. I mean, I think of a dating app. For every bad date, okay, there's going to be one out there. I just need to keep trying. And maybe that's not the best analogy to use, but I do think that it means a lot to us that, you didn't let that mistake play a role in your decision moving forward.
Yeah. And I have been surrounded by support in a lot of areas in my life that many transgender people do not have. And so I consider myself extremely fortunate. I mean, I am a privileged transgender person because I have family support. And even just that, most people don't have. They at least have one parent, if not siblings and aunts and uncles, that just completely cut them out of their lives. Like 100%. Like we are not speaking to you ever again. And I think about that in my family. And if that had happened to me, or even my wife's family, we would not be in the place that we are now. And so, I feel like I really am able to extend a lot of grace because I have so much support around me that I realize that my worth is not defined by how other people see me. I have people around me that are cheering me on and rooting for me. I grew up going to church every week. I've always been a person of faith, and went to the same church for 18 years, went off to college, found another church there, went to that church for a long time, and got burned by both of those places that I considered home. I was denied communion on Easter Sunday in front of everybody. And again, having that family support, I was told the day before that I was not going to be able to take communion the next day at Easter. And my entire family, who is a pretty big figure in our church, all sat and refused to go up. And to make that bold of a statement in a place that we had been for 18 years, I mean, I was in tears the whole time. And, so I've been denied communion. I've been denied baptism, not able to join small groups. I've been told I can't even be a door greeter in some places. And so it's hard when you feel so skeptical walking into places you feel like should be safe. And you fall in love and you get to know the people. And then there's political tape around it that says, well, we love you and we want you here, but you can't do this, 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 and this. So you can be a part of our quote unquote family, but not fully a part of it. And that's difficult.
That's actually really shocking because I had not heard you say anything about being denied communion. And for me, that's something that's like, for us Christians, communion is symbolic of remembering what Jesus did for us. So regardless of what is in your life or anything like that, like that should never be something that should be taken away. And so I think just going back to that same theme of, there are bad gyms, there are also bad churches. And I think sometimes people just miss the mark, and it's unfortunate because, Greg Glassman's a very recent example. One bad decision by one person that has a public enough face can stain the whole thing. And sometimes that's what happens with people. So I think it's awesome that your family did what they did, and they were showing people like, hey, this is not how we need to be acting as Christians. We need to be loving people. We need to be making sure that everyone knows that love is the one thing that binds us all together. So that was shocking to me to hear, but also pretty cool just to hear how your family responded and the support that you have in your life. But in school, was that something that was a little bit, because I know you had a very tight-knit group of friends at school. Was that something that was a struggle for you when things started to change in their eyes? Maybe not even necessarily in your own eyes, but once you started to be a little bit more public about stuff.
Yeah. So as you said earlier, we both went to Anderson University, soar Ravens soar. And so my wife and I started dating my sophomore, junior year summer. And at that point, neither of us had ever dated or been in a same-sex relationship, because at that point I was still identifying as female. And we went to a very private, small Christian school and had no idea what that meant. Like our own relationship, what it meant, because this was also new to us, but also what does this look like when we go back to school in the fall? Do we tell anybody? We've now signed up to live together in an apartment with 2 other people. This is a huge, complicated mess now. And so we actually didn't tell anyone until our senior year. So we did sophomore year, junior year, or my apologies, sorry, all of junior year, and then half of senior year, dating without anybody knowing. We came out to our professors first. She's a social work major, I'm psych major, so it's a pretty safe environment accepting people in those professions. And so we did come out to them. It was about December of our senior year. And really, we were advised at that point from them. They kind of said, it's really gray area. We don't really know the policies 100% for sure. So if you can wait until you graduate, you're so close, just wait. And so we only came out to a few of our friends. We each kind of had a tight-knit circle of our own. My friends were extremely accepting just right from the get-go. Kind of the I told you so type feel.
You played softball, right?
I did not.
You did not?
I did not.
Did you have friends that were on the softball team, though?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
cool
who you're
people.
thinking
Yeah.
of. Yeah. And so, yeah, they just 100% were just kind of like, oh, yeah, we knew. And when you said you had to come talk to us, we knew that's what it was about. Affirmed, we love you. Jesus loves you. Nothing's going to change. Mm-hmm. Now, when we came out to my wife's friends, it was a different reaction. It was very hesitant. It was, I feel like you lied to me. What did I miss? Well, how can you love Jesus and be in this relationship at the same time? And are you sure that you're not just, this was my favorite comment, are you sure you're not just settling because you can't find a man to date? And if you see my wife, I surely didn't settle. And so it was really fielding those relationships that we had built for 4 years. And if you know small Christian colleges, I mean, those are your people, and you do every waking moment of things together. And so she really struggled, Jenna did, just feeling like she had lost those relationships and that there was now a barrier between them, and she wasn't sure how to navigate that.
And when people react that way, how do you see that? Do you tend to think, almost on the defensive, or do you tend to think more like maybe their lives have had some things that led up to this point where maybe they're just having a hard time understanding, maybe they're not as open-minded or something like that?
Yeah, if you had asked me that 6 years ago when I was freshly coming out, I would have been very defensive and said, well, that's just not fair. And, they're not taking the time to get to know me. And, they're just conservative and they're not open-minded. And I would have put it all on them. And now I really see it as an opportunity to educate. I look back on my own life. I grew up in a conservative home where we never, as a family, talked about same-sex marriage or people who identify as transgender. Never had that conversation. And so I can't blame someone for not knowing, because I wouldn't have known, really, probably even to this day, had I not gone through it. I've only sought out people in the LGBT community to really get to know them going through this experience, to have someone to go with me. I don't have anyone in my immediate circle aside from that that's in the community. And so I can't be upset when people don't know, because maybe they haven't had the opportunity to learn.
The power of education is so important. And that was definitely a huge topic that we spoke about in the earlier parts of this episode with Bran and Abel. And speaking from my own personal experience, my childhood growing up was very similar to yours. Maybe not as strictly conservative. I mean, my parents split up, and I think my mom and my dad have separate beliefs. And so I just kind of am back and forth on those things. But really, up until I started coaching and being a member at M4G, and especially up until I met you, and I feel like we've gotten pretty close pretty fast, I've had to teach myself a lot of stuff, and I've had to grow a lot as a person over the past probably year and a half or so for what I see now as for the better. And I think it's the responsibility of the individual, and by individual I mean people in general, to really look deep at what you think about things, and then educate yourself and get on that path of just sort of like, maybe what I think can change a little bit, how I view people can change, because I think that's really what we need more of nowadays.
Yeah. And I work in an elementary school, so I have 450 little people that hang out with me all day, every day. And so that was a really new experience for me too, and going through my transition, because I started in my school identifying with the pronouns she, her, and changed them over the past year and a half-ish. And it shocked me how much the kids didn't care. It was the adults in the building that really couldn't get over it and couldn't model for the kids my correct pronouns. Even down to our little kindergartners, I call them my kinder babies, they would run up to me in the middle of the office and just yell like, "Are you a boy or a girl?" And I would tell them, and then they'd be like, "All right, cool. Can we be friends?" And it was really eye-opening to me that we have the responsibility as adults to teach how to accept and love people.
Yeah, we spoke with Abel and Bran, and I think a lot of times we as humans, it's just our natural instinct. Even Abel said, he goes, "I don't like confrontation. I just don't." Awkward situations, whether we know we're actively doing it or not, we tend to run away from them or try to at least avoid them. And I think for myself specifically, I have a sister who is bisexual, married to a man, but still bisexual, and he loves her, and they understand that situation. But she was my very best friend. And maybe that's sad to people, I don't know, whatever. But she was my very best friend. And she came out to me when I was in 8th grade. And, growing up, we've talked about, I grew up in a very strict Christian home. And for me, I'm not even going to feel bad about that. I thought, oh my gosh, my sister's going to hell. Like that, I was 8th grade. That's what I felt like I was taught. That's what I thought I knew. And immediately I had a choice to make. And for me, this is where I actually get confused with Jenna's friends. How can you love Jesus, but love someone of the same, right? And for me, it's like, well, how could I have ever said that I love my sister? Because now if I take that back, I'm the liar. I'm the person, so it actually put me into a situation where, as weird as this may sound, I loved her more. And it was almost like, I don't care if it's us versus the world. And it wasn't. I mean, we had a lot of people that, accepted that and still loved her and stuff like that. But that was my start. And then from there, it's because of her and the conversations we were able to have months and years after that, I got to understand her so well that I almost felt like, without even having to talk to somebody, it's not that I understood them, but there was nothing that anyone could tell me that I felt like I needed to judge them for. And the last one that I'll say is, we went back for my 10-year class reunion, and none of us had known that Jordan Hansen had transitioned from male and now was a transgender female. And we graduated with her, and none of us knew. And we had this class of 2016 Facebook page, and just a few months before, she gets on and she's like, "Hey, so there's nowhere for me to go to the bathroom when we tour the high school." And I am actually embarrassed at some of the people that responded and basically was like, well, why don't you go ahead and just order a porta potty for yourself? And at the time, I mean, I was so like new to this. I had never met anyone who had gone through this procedure. I had only seen it, on whatever, news, videos, movies, whatever. And so for me, like, just my heart sank, I guess, because just the bullying that was happening in front of me and I only had 152 kids in my class. Like, that's not really a lot. So to feel like I knew the interaction between these kids going on, and then to get there and just the way that people looked at her and treated her, and she had not gone through a full surgery yet. So it's almost like you were saying, other than longer hair and some makeup, right, she didn't look like that. And so it was very, very hard. But from there, I mean, I actually had a conversation with Jordan while I was there. I wanted to make sure that happened. I wanted to make sure that she didn't feel like I felt that way. And again, that's Kansas. I'm in Indiana. There's a lot of people from Kansas I don't keep in contact with, and I haven't kept in contact with her. But for me, like, that was just that next step. That way, you never know what God's putting in your life. But Sydney, I didn't think twice when I got your email. And I just would have to say it might just be because of Jordan, just already having that and remembering how I felt then and trying to understand how she felt in the moment, and then how you must have been feeling at all the other gyms that you had gone to. So again, my point is please don't run from awkward situations. If you can get through them now, you never know what it might set up further down the line and stuff like that.
Yeah, I certainly, when I started this journey and transitioning, I would have never thought myself to be someone that would be advocating and promoting and speaking at conferences and doing podcasts and things like that. But I've recognized how needed it is that there's a voice out there that is telling people, don't run, don't give up. There are good people out there. And M4G is one of those places. I mean, the minute you walk in the door, it's family, it's community. And, how easy could it have been for you guys to put a women's and men's restroom sign up on each of the doors? It would have been very easy. But how easy is it to take them down as well? It's a choice that people have to make. And hoping as we move forward and, society starts learning more and more about the transgender and the LGBTQ community, that, those choices will be supporting our community instead of hurting it.
Awesome. I think that's a great place to end. Thank you guys for listening to the episode. I know it was a long one, but I think it's probably been one of the more valuable ones that we've had thus far. If you're interested in connecting with Sydney more, I will link his stuff down in the description. So make sure you go to his Instagram page, shoot him a message, ask him any questions that you want to ask. Just, connect there and learn more if you're someone who feels like you need to learn more in this area. Thank you guys again for listening to the whole thing. We will hopefully have some more of you guys back. I think it'd be awesome to continue the conversation, maybe as things progress in the future. But for now, please leave us a 5-star rating if you can on iTunes, and we will catch you guys in the next one.